This is Colin with Wireless Comtech. I've seen a couple of questions about on videos that I've made about how I acquire software, where I find it, and so I figured I'd talk about that real quick and also give a little more information about the programming computers that I use for programming radios. Of course, over my right shoulder, your left, I have two of the portables that I can program with my setups. The yellow one being a Kenwood Viking VP6000, and the black one back here being a Motorola Astro Saber circa 1996. So I can program both of them. In fact, but I actually will use two different computers to do it because one requires a 32-bit operating system. So let's talk about that real quick. So my primary computer that I use for just everyday use for work and whatever, working from home, is a AMD Ryzen 7 2700, which is what I'm actually recording this on. It's an 8-core processor clocked at 3.7 gigahertz, 32 gigs of memory. I've got a what's the graphics card in it? TI 1050 titanium. Sound about right? 1050 titanium. It's Windows 10 Pro. Nothing really special about it in terms of the operating system. Some of the little special notes, though, are I have a PCIe card installed on here, in addition to having this PCIe encryption controller, which is a GEM 2, which stands for Johnson Encryption Module. It looks like this. I have a handful of them, as you can maybe able to make out. It's got a TI DSP on it. It also has some other things like a AMBI 2 Plus vocoder built into it, and it's licensed for P25 Phase 1 and 2. This is actually used in some consoles with P25 systems that EF Johnson has made available to some. Most commonly, though, you find it in EF Johnson's internal Stargate consoles. Okay, so the next computer that we're running is going to be this right here, if it'll start. Yep, there it goes. So, forgive me, this is a coming to you through a capture card. I can't really see some of the stuff about it, but no. Boom. This I've showed before. It is a this is what I would probably call my primary programming computer. It is a Intel Core 2 running Windows 7 Ultimate, 32-bit, 4 gigs of memory. Nothing fancy. It's just in use for stuff like programming radios that require 32-bit operating systems, and it's quite old. This was actually for the time, it's circa 2011, 2012, and it was part of a Stargate console. And again, it's got hardware serial ports on it. And again, you see that PCIe encryption-decryption controller. Again, I just never took the GEM card out of this computer when I acquired it and repurposed it. So as you can see from this screen, I have a bunch of programming software loaded up on here. But now kind of the cool thing about this one, we're going to reboot it real quickly, is that this one I actually use for DOS programs as well. It's running in a dual boot configuration, which allows me to, come on, if it'll boot. The capture card does some weird things here. DOS 7.1. And we're starting. Hopefully. There we go. PCI scan complete. So 32-bit. So I have FAT32 support. I'm using DOS 7 out of Windows 98. And that's simply because there's a partition on this hard drive. It's one hard drive for both the Windows 7 and DOS 7 partitions that allow me to just drag and drop files without having to plug in a floppy drive and export them the old-fashioned way. It will support, as long as the machine's booted with a USB floppy drive plugged into it, it will actually recognize that as A. There's no floppy drive in it right now, but I have several different kinds of from vendors. I have ICOM Kenwood. I believe I have a BK stuff on here, and of course the Motorola stuff. So, for example, if I want to launch the GM 300, software, it launches right up, and I can actually read and write using the serial ports, as they're both recognized in this computer configuration. So this is how, and this is actually, I played around for a long time trying to figure out I've known for about a decade that this would work for programming these radios, this multi-core CPU. You could just disable the cache and it will program almost all of the DOS based, which is Motorola radios from the late 80s up until Motorola switched over to Windows. So it works. I've never been able to actually capture the screen though reliably, and I finally figured out how to do that with a external capture card. So I can do things like S, and we're going to launch. Oh, is that not right? DOS is kind of, if you've never messed with it, it's kind of a pain sometimes. So I can launch various older programs like this. This one has a more traditional layout. And just program as I need. But as far as software acquisition goes, pretty much all of the software came from a previous employer. As we were cleaning out stuff, I was getting installation disks. And so I've compiled this, especially on the DOS side. On the Windows side, pretty much all the Motorola software is from my MOL account. All of the Kenwood software is from that previous employer. And I've got Armada through a previous employer, current versions of VF Johnson's Armada, in addition to some Kenwood software. Well, I have to say, the Kenwood software is on my work-issued laptop. Some of the newer Kenwood stuff, like the D1 and D3, KPG D1 and KPG D3 are actually on my issued computer, and those are licensed specifically for that computer, so I don't mess with those. But the big one people seem to be looking for is version 4 of the 1225 software, which was written for XP but will run on any 32-bit version of Windows, XP, or should run on Windows 98 actually, even though that was built for even though that version of the software was 3, which 3 will run on Windows 7 as well. But again, classic Motorola problem. If the radio has been programmed with version 4, then you have to have version 4 to read and write to it. You can't go backwards with version 3. And that's how that software, and so people seem to be looking for that one a bunch, and that one is straight off of MOL. At least when I grabbed it from my MOL account several years ago, it was still hosted. I haven't checked to see if it's still hosted on my MOL account today. Some stuff's disappeared as Motorola has finally given up trying to offer any kind of archive for some of the programming. But again, this is basically all I ever use for programming and aligning computers or radios, with this computer right here being my kind of go-to machine, as it has most of my software. Again, you see Maycom software, you see the ICOM stuff, you see the Motorola stuff, and so a lot of these videos. Now, granted, I don't do this capture card when I'm running Windows 7. The capture card's only for DOS. It was just convenient so you could see me swapping between the two at boot. I typically use RDP because it scales up, and I just use my main desktop to show some of that off. So RDP upscales, and it looks a lot nicer. Anyway, I thought I'd try and make a fairly quick video explaining the computers. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I don't really know of any sources where you can find software that aren't from Motorola, so or direct from the manufacturers. I've always been provided that. So if I don't have it, then I've probably not had to work on it professionally. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and maybe this inspires you if you're needing to program that old GM300 that's sitting in a corner of your ham shack, and you have a computer with a serial port, and you can get FreeDOS or DOS 7. FreeDOS will work as well, loaded on it. Then maybe you can put that GM300 to use and get it and play with it some. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.